Hello and welcome to our election special presentation. We are in Uttar Pradesh, and in fact we are right now in the assembly of Uttar Pradesh, the Vidhan Sabha, which is the place wherein all those 403 who will be elected after 7 phases of polling in the state will come in, take their oaths and then govern the state from here. Now Uttar Pradesh is a politically significant state, not only for the national parties like Bharatiya Janata Party and Congress, but also for regional players out here, that is Samajwadi Party and Bahujan Samaj Party. There are several issues which are right now in this particular election making the waves. We have with us a distinguished panel of guests with whom we will have a discussion on what exactly are the issues in this election and whether or not those issues will have any effect on the lives of voters. So let me introduce you to our panel. We have with us Mr. Manoj Bhadra ji, senior journalist, and then we have Dr. Anish Anshari, a former bureaucrat and a former additional chief secretary of the state as well, and a former vice chancellor of Urdu and Farsi University. Then we also have Professor Nishi Pande from Lucknow University, somebody who can talk about education. And then we have an industrialist and a dairy industrialist at that, Mr. Kumar Agrawal. He is also the vice chairman of CII's Lucknow chapter. So let's begin the discussion, and let's begin from you, Jay. One issue which the opposition have been trying for quite some time now to ensure that it stays relevant, it stays on the top, is the issue of demonetization. You're an industrialist. It is being said that demonetization has hit industry very hard, and being an industrialist, you're also a dairy industrialist, a section of the industry which is said to have taken the hardest hit due to demonetization. Do you agree, one, that demonetization has been counterproductive for the industry? Two, do you believe that demonetization is a very significant issue in this election, specifically for the industry community?
I won't put it in perspective of good or bad. That will be too political to say.
Okay.
But for dairy industry, it has not been bad. Largely for the farmers, yes, it has had its negative impacts. For the trading community, I think it has certainly hit them very hard. But somewhere I found it necessary also, because there had to be some hard step to actually change the underlying habits. Though the impact, in the past 3 months, it has almost vanished with the availability of cash in the markets. There is certainly a change of habit amongst the buyers also, significantly amongst the farmers also, because industries like us, they have been forced to actually promote the farmers to open their bank accounts, transfer the amounts directly to the banks. So largely it has been good, bad, everything.
So it's a mixed effect as per you. Let me come to Professor Nishi Pande. Professor, this is one decision which is seemed to have taken away the savings of the women across the country. You yourself are a woman. Those savings which were tucked away somewhere in the house, they were ultimately had to be deposited in the banks. What is your viewpoint? Is it very important issue in these elections, and is it going to hurt BJP?
I don't think demonetization is such a major issue in these elections. And something which is far more important in UP is the security of women, which may impact the government.
Okay.
Because I think most women feel pretty insecure. And if you look at the incidence of rape and the number of rapes which are being reported, and the status of women in terms of education, health and other facilities which are available to them, including free education, and what difficulty there is in being able to get the free education, those would become issues on which women would vote.
Okay.
Demonetizations as such wouldn't be, because I think the very rich women who would have had more than 20,000 tucked away have got away with it. The others have had much less than 20,000 tucked away, so I don't think it really impacted them.
So you believe that it's not that important, but you brought up the law and order issue, and I guess out here nobody would be in a much better position than Dr. Anshari, who's himself been a former bureaucrat, a district magistrate and an additional chief secretary as well. Dr. Do you believe that law and order is the prevailing issue? It's what is going to matter, whether or not the ruling party can put things in perspective, and whether or not the opposition can push them to the wall?
Law and order would always be a very major election issue in a state like UP. In fact, at least one major regional party has made it an election issue.
Yes.
That if they get to power, then they are going to improve the law and order situation. Besides the political aspect, all growth, economic growth, is ultimately dependent on having a very peaceful society. Therefore, any government which gets into power, any party which gets into power, it is their duty to ensure that administration of law is very fair and objective, that the culprits are punished on time, victims are compensated adequately, and that an environment of goodwill and peaceful conditions is created, so that investors, they get encouraged and come and invest their money here.
It's an atmosphere which can benefit all. But Dr. Anshari, you have served under several governments led by several parties, be it the BSP regime or the Samajwadi Party regime. What do you believe ails the system? Is it, is it somewhere deep-rooted within the system itself? Is it that difficult to, govern this huge state? Do you believe size is a problem?
No, size is not a problem. During 1970s and 80s, this very state, when it was being ruled by different parties, both Congress and non-Congress, law and order used to be in a much better condition, with the result that the state's economic growth rate was either parallel to the national level or better. In the 80s, it was better than the national average. So it is not the size of the state which is going to affect. It is the strengthening of the institution which has effect on the maintenance of law and order. If the district magistrates, if the SSPs, if the SHOs, Daroga, if they feel confident that if they catch up with the culprits, nobody is going to ask for any questions from them, they are not going to be transferred, then law and order would be improved. But if they have a fear, if the law enforcement machinery itself is doubtful, what will be the consequences for them in case they go after enforcing the law neutrally, objectively? Then I think there is serious problem.
So basically what you're saying is that there is a lot which needs to be improved as far as system is concerned, as far as the entire bureaucratic system and law and order machinery is concerned. Bhadra Sahab, let me bring you here. You've been a journalist, you've been watching the, political upheavals in the state for quite some time now. If I'm not wrong, almost 2 decades. One issue which has always been talked about by every political party is the issue of development. And the same happened in this election also. The ruling party had a slogan, Kaam Bolta Hai. The work speaks for itself. And then the opposition, specifically the BJP, which wants to come back to power, was harping upon the Prime Minister's work being done in the last 2.5 years at the centre. The Prime Minister in his every rally talks about how his government in the centre has given a lot of money to the UP, but it has not been put to good use. But by the time half of this election is over now, do you believe the developmental issue has now taken a backseat? It has gone somewhere, it has disappeared.
Yes, you are right. The development issue has always backfoot now. Now, Kabristan, Shamshan, and now donkey issue has gained the momentum in UP. And the development issue is just in the poll manifesto only. No one is talking about development now, and now the caste issue has become the prime of all the political parties. While some political parties are wooing a particular caste and community, while others are going for other castes. So these elections, the development issue started with the beginning, with the poll manifesto release, but it has almost wiped away, and there is nothing to see about.
Let me bring in Professor Pande. Professor Pande, do you agree with Mr. Bhadra that development has finally taken a backseat, as it happens in almost every election in this particular state, and it's ultimately the caste which is now the overarching factor on which the political parties are trying to woo voters, and the voters are going to cast their vote?
You know, if you know UP, you will understand that caste and class and gender plays such a significant role on a day-to-day basis that to imagine that it would not impact elections is impossible. So I believe that the caste issue plays out everywhere. So in the elections it will definitely play itself out, and I think more, so caste issues, yes, Security issues, yes. Development may come a third.
Okay.
So caste
a
would be
distant third.
A distant third.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it remains in one's concern. But if you look at the larger reality, people are more concerned than even in the villages when they are voting. They will largely vote on caste lines.
Dr. Anshari, do you agree with Professor Pande?
Different take.
Okay.
See, we generally in the middle classes
Uh-huh.
tend to look at the caste conflict as if it is something highly undesirable.
Okay.
My take is totally different.
Okay.
What is happening is that not only in Uttar Pradesh, but in most of the states of the country, power has been concentrated in a few upper caste segments in all the religions. Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, in all the religious groups, it is the upper caste which are ruling the roost. So only 15 to 20% of the population is having all the political, economic and educational powers. That is being challenged consistently because of the democratic framework. So the caste or the caste groups which have been ignored or which have been marginalized, they are knocking at the door and saying, you give us our share. So if OBCs, for example, they constitute about more than 52% of the national population, they are demanding that they should be increased to 52% or more. Scheduled caste, they are about 23% or 25%, they are demanding share. Muslims, who are about 15 to 20%, they are demanding their share. Women, they are demanding their share. So all the neglected groups, they are asking for their pie in the development and growth of the country. And I think it is very justified. There will be no meaning of having a democratic polity if all this segment of the population are not given their share. So this Manuvadi system is being questioned.
So basically the system is being questioned. Let me bring in Jay here. Jay, everybody agrees that, you know, development is a distant third. Now that seems to be a bad omen for your segment, for the industry, because if no development, there will be no infrastructure. If no infrastructure, there will be less investment. Less investment means less progress for the industry. Are you worried?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the case. That is a cause for worry because no party is talking about industry as such.
Okay.
So their development comes a distant third, and industry does not exist even. And if you go to the UPSIDC industrial areas, the industrial estates that the government has built, you can see the infrastructure there. It is shoddy, shoddy to say the least, and it has been like this for the last 20 years. So, I mean, yes, no government has focused their attention on giving facilities to the industry, to give infrastructure, and that is the sad state of affairs, I must say.
But I have something to say on this. That no government can afford to overlook development.
Okay.
And so when whoever comes into power, by whatever way they come into power, through caste votes, which I don't consider is wrong at all. If a particular group of people want to vote in groups, it's good. But whichever government comes into power, their agenda, on the top of the agenda, would be development. And
but
it
then
has
why
to
does
be.
it happen that when elections come, this particular agenda slowly slides back to the back seat, and then by the time it's time for the voters to come out and vote, it completely disappears?
No, because I feel it happens because for the common man, they don't understand the concept of this major development that the state should be undergoing or taking. Development for the common man is what happens with him.
It's about his area, his village, his township, or his locality.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is.
So I don't think any government which comes into power will have to put development at number one on the agenda.
One other major thing apart from development, Bhadraji, since you put the ball rolling on the development issue, saying that it is a distant third, it is nowhere, is the issue of crime, as Professor Pande was also pointing out, that law and order is a problem. Specifically, law and order is a problem for women. But on crime, I want to bring in a different angle. Crime in politics, the hand-in-glove approach for which Uttar Pradesh has been really infamous. So do you believe that all those claims by political parties that we will give tickets to all clean people with clean image, we will bring in clean lawmakers in the front, that is something which is also dissipated?
That is totally failed.
Okay.
The ADR report said that in every phase the election, the third, fourth phase the election, there is at least 20% criminal background people, candidates, and all parties have fielded criminals. There is no such difference between The parties, even if BJP, BSP, SP, Congress, every party has fielded criminals.
Let me bring in Dr. Anshari out here. Dr. Anshari, this cannot happen overnight. This is something, this is an issue which is something which might have, been festered for quite some time now. You were there in the bureaucracy, you were a bureaucrat, you must have seen it happening. Do you believe that there is a cure, really a cure for this, to break the nexus between crime and politics?
There is. Actually, Election Commission of India, they have made recommendation to the government of India several times that any candidate who has been charge sheeted and punished at the first level of jurisdiction at the lower court, he should be disqualified from contesting. Unfortunately, Government of India have yet to take a call on that recommendation.
No, but what about political parties? Should they also take a moral stand? They take a decision that, okay, fine, this is what we have to do. Professor Pandey, do you agree?
They
No,
should.
I don't think political parties are ever going to take this stand.
Okay.
And it's because of lack of political will. And this nexus, you can imagine how deep-rooted and what deep connections it has, politics and crime, that, and all across the world, not just India, across the world, you will find that this happens. And so I don't think it's very easy to get away with it by saying that, if you do not...
Not that easy. It's going to take a lot of time, lot of effort,
time and political will.
And political will, and maybe a lot more effort from the Election Commission, as
Yes.
Dr. Anshari was pointing out. Let me go back to you, Anshari Saab, and this time on a different issue. All of us were talking about how caste is very important now in these elections, and you were also saying that, this is something which is happening because of the way things have been for quite some time now. Apart from caste, unfortunately, religion is also a very important factor in the state of Uttar Pradesh. Muslims are a very significant, size of population. The way politics has, been done in Uttar Pradesh specifically and in the country as a whole, some call it the appeasement of minorities. The others accuse, the opposite side of being communal. So, is that something which is again a reason for worry for people of Uttar Pradesh?
See, as far as Muslims are concerned, they have officially about 15% share in the population. In states like UP, they have 20%, Assam has 33%, Bengal has 25%. In all these states, the share of Muslim employed persons in the government sector is not more than 3%.
Okay.
That speaks volumes about the appeasement story. This story of appeasement is spread deliberately to malign the community, as if all the political parties except one, they're trying to woo that community. The reality is that Sachar Committee, Rangnath Mishra Commission report, and the latest survey done by the Giri Institute of Development Studies, Lucknow, they have found that Muslims, especially the backward segment of Muslims, they have been consistently ignored in the participation in the employment, in the government sector. So, what needs to be done is that in proportion to the share in population, all the communities should be ensured participation in the government jobs and educational institutions at least to the ratio of half of their population. If Muslims constitute 15% of the population, at least 7.5% of Muslim population should get the job, should get the educational institution.
So you're talking about a broader aspect of bringing in reservation to ensure based on the...
I'm talking of mainstreaming all the major communities.
Mainstreaming all the major communities.
Yeah, but that is not what is happening. What is happening is the upper caste segment of the population, they are dominating in politics, in economy, and in education.
Almost the same thing as what you were pointing out earlier. That brings us also to a very important question, and that is about education. See, participation of a particular community will very much depend upon how literate that particular community is. Professor Pandey, do you believe that successive governments in Uttar Pradesh have failed to live up to their promises or to ensure that education reaches every nook and corner of the state?
Absolutely, very well put. Successive governments, every single government that comes in, education is never on their agenda. It's at number 10 or 12, primary or secondary. You will be shocked to know that in primary education, the basic infrastructure that is required in the villages, in the primary schools is not there. In some places it's there on paper. And how do you expect that that the secondary education is going to have any kind of quality which directly impacts tertiary education. By giving free laptops, you are bringing students up with technology, that's fine. But you have to invest more in education. The percentage of money that is put into education is minuscule compared to the other sectors. And unless and until governments begin to realize that more money and more effort needs to go into education, things are not going to change.
Bhadra sahab, you've been the devil's advocate out here in this discussion. Do you believe that education will, someday get its due, being the foremost thing? Because it has not happened so far.
I think that political willpower is the first thing that any government comes in next 1 month. He should have a priority itself. Education should be a priority. There is at least over 1.5 lakh vacancy of teachers in the government school and secondary school. So that should be full. If there is no teacher, who will?
So primary education is almost in as bad shape, or rather much bad shape, worse shape than the higher education.
And recently, some days back, High Court even asked these senior bureaucrats and other officer politicians even to send their children to government school so that they should know what is happening there.
Dr. Anshari, a quick comment from you. I know you would want to speak on this because you've been a former Vice Chancellor of the Urdu Farsi University as well. Is that, what Professor Pandey and Mr. Bhadra is saying, is that true? Education has been lost somewhere?
I would like to give some credit to government efforts. Right to Education Act has really made it compulsory on the state governments to provide school education up to 14 years of age to all the children universally. But the problem is that while the gross enrollment has increased right from primary to higher education level, but the quality of education delivered is very questionable. The ASER survey, the annual survey of education which comes annually, it points out that the students of 5th class and 8th class, they are not able to read the test of class 3. They are not able to do the sums of class 3. What really can change the game is that you transfer the responsibility of primary education and secondary education to the local bodies, Nagar Palikas and Panchayat.
And maybe the corporates may help?
1 minute. The states which have really transferred the responsibility to the local bodies like Karnataka, Kerala, West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, there the schooling and secondary school education is much better than the northern part of the country where everything is governed by capital towns. So that is what the major change is, and that is required by the Constitutional Amendment.
Constitution
73rd
Amendment.
Yeah.
Okay, let me, that brings us to one very other important aspect, and Mr. Agrawal has been quietly, must have been mulling over this particular fact now. Everybody in this election is also talking about corruption. Every party's slogan says, Bhrishtachar Khatam Karenge. Be it the ruling party or be it the opposition, and the opposition would have been on the ruling side on the treasury benches maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Is corruption one of the major issues for the industry, Mr. Agrawal?
Yes, I think in UP at least it is one of the major issues. Because it is really difficult to set up shop here. For a lot of industries, we can see the Pollution Control Board, and we can see a lot other regulations. The government has been a bit indifferent to all these things in the past, and I think it is a major issue.
It is a major issue. Professor Pandey, do you agree? Because corruption is something which is almost in every sphere.
Yeah, actually, even in the education sector, the sector for women's welfare and childcare, it is corruption which is impacting the quality, because the kind of money which is allocated, which should be flowing into these sectors for bringing about qualitative change, doesn't actually reach there. So corruption is impacting just about everything.
So both industry, education, all those spheres are suffering. Yes, Dr. Anish.
See, the main source of corruption in our country happens to be that we have a bad political funding system. The candidates are supposed to fund their expenditure. If there were any way of funding the election expenses, possibly this can be reduced. Many countries which are smaller, Denmark, Sweden, they have tried it very successfully. There is a tripod relationship among politicians, bureaucrats and industrialists. All the three, they feed each other in corruption. They take benefit and they only deprive the citizens
And
of their...
ultimately the people suffer.
Ultimately the people suffer. So what the government needs to do is that they should, again there are certain recommendations from both the Law Commission and from the Election Commission that electoral system needs cleaning. So if that can be achieved, if those recommendations are implemented by the central government, possibly...
Okay, let me have a quick comment from Mr. Bhadra on this. Just like every other issue which you've been talking about, that they are on the back burner, are the political parties and their leaders paying lip service to the issue of corruption also in these elections?
The corruption has been institutionalized in UP.
Okay.
Every party says something, but they are not ready to do anything.
Okay.
In this elections too, several crore rupees have been spent from the back door. And even ADR has reported that the money spent this time is more than the past.
Okay, so it's also an issue. I'm afraid that we are running very short of time. You know, there are several issues, and I'm very sure that you know, there must be some other issues wherein the people specifically would want to ensure that those particular issues are at the top of the agenda of political parties, not only during the elections time, but also after one of them have formed the government and will rule for the next 5 years. So let's wait and watch as to what happens in next almost a month's time as to who will form the government and whether or not that particular party which rules the state for next 5 years will have all these issues on their topmost priority, or will it be the same story once again? We'll come back from a different city with a different panel of guests and maybe similar issues. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.